The recent attempt by 12 of Europe's biggest clubs to establish a breakaway Super League is the biggest existential threat UEFA has faced in its near 70-year history. If successful, it would have brought an end to continental competition as we know it. The Champions League and Europa League may have become extinct altogether, and if this happened, the governing body could have effectively become obsolete in club football. As former President Michel Platini wrote in 2014, a football organisation without any competitions of its own makes about as much sense as an airport without aeroplanes. But UEFA has itself not been shy to controversy, and many see this latest saga as the logical result of its inability to keep the sport's super-rich clubs in check. But how has a once prestigious footballing institution come to a moment like this? Let's start at the beginning. Founded in 1954, the Union of European Football Associations was formed to protect Europe's common interests as nations from the continent became outnumbered within FIFA. Inspired by South America's CONMEBOL, founded almost 40 years earlier, European federations decided that the continent needed to unite on issues surrounding the beautiful game, a decade on from a war which had seen it divided and brought to its knees. A year later, the European Cup was launched, but it began as a predictable affair, with not all teams earning a place by merit, and Real Madrid, who had been a driving force in establishing the competition, winning each of its first 5 editions. But it soon captured the imagination of fans across the continent. The 60s saw Bela Gutmann's Benfica, spearheaded by the legendary Eusebio, win it twice, as did Helenio Herrera's Internazionale, who brought the philosophy of Catenaccio to the international stage. Matt Busby's Man United triumphed in 1968, 10 years after the Munich air disaster which took the lives of 11 teammates and staff, while Jock Stein's Celtic won it the previous campaign with a team made up entirely of local players. Rinus Michel's Ajax then brought total football to the equation at the beginning of the next decade, winning their first European Cup 3 years before the Netherlands' famous jaunt at the 1974 World Cup. As television coverage became more widespread, the European Cup saw fairy tales broadcast to millions of viewers across the continent, helping spread tactical ideas and fan culture as the sport entered the modern era. But by the early 90s, football was in need of a makeover, and a process started which eventually led to the events we've seen in 2021. The 1985 Heysel Stadium disaster, which claimed the lives of 39 fans waiting to watch the European Cup final between Juventus and Liverpool, brought to attention both the sport's problem with hooliganism, particularly English hooliganism, and the unsafe state of stadiums. Within 10 years, all-seater stadiums had been made compulsory, while in England the industry leaders had decided to shed the sport's poor reputation by bringing an end to the 104-year history of the Football League with the establishment of the more glossy and commercial Premier League. A move which has seen it become the most watched domestic competition in the world and a cornerstone of the British economy, while simultaneously pricing out traditional fan bases from attending matches. Around the same time, commercial motives were also forcing UEFA to switch things up. In 1991-92, they replaced the European Cup's quarter-finals with a group stage, so participating clubs could play more games and thus generate more revenue. And the following campaign, they rebranded the entire competition, renaming it the Champions League, and eventually moving the group stage to the first round instead. By 1998, the updated competition had met its first major challenge, with Italian sports management company Media Partners attempting to establish a breakaway Super League, including the likes of Milan, Real Madrid, Liverpool and Man United. They offered clubs a combined payout of £750 million to participate, over 7 times the amount dished out by UEFA for Champions League involvement at the time. Under pressure, Europe's governing body scrapped the Cup Winners' Cup and vowed to expand the UCL to include more clubs from the top leagues. This set in motion the race for top 4, which would become a fixture in the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A and the Bundesliga, and further widen the gap in wealth and quality between the top 5 leagues and the rest of Europe, where qualification for the UCL became more limited and top talents became more ripe for picking by rich foreign clubs. Just one club from outside Europe's top 5 leagues, Porto, have won the competition, with no other side having even made the final. It was clear even at this stage that the top clubs from Europe's most lucrative leagues were becoming too powerful. Lorenzo Sanz, Real Madrid's president in the late 90s, had been a big supporter of the Super League, and his successor Florentino Perez implemented a recruitment policy which saw the club break the transfer record twice in 2 years, bringing in the biggest names in world football to boost the club's global brand. When he returned to the club in 2009, Perez broke the record again twice in the same summer, and instantly revived the idea of a European Super League which ensured, quote, that the best teams always play against the best, despite his club at that point having failed to reach the Champions League quarter-finals for 5 consecutive seasons. UEFA, he thought, wouldn't be powerful enough to stop it. By this point, oligarchs had entered the European football landscape, with the Premier League's liberal view of foreign ownership facilitating the huge takeovers of Chelsea by Roman Abramovich and Manchester City by Sheikh Mansour, while French giants PSG were acquired by Qatar Sports Investments in 2011. Meanwhile, English football's traditional big clubs, Arsenal, Man United and Liverpool, had all been bought by American sports investors. Partly in response to this, UEFA established financial fair play to stop clubs spending beyond their means and, in their words, to improve the overall financial health of European football. Within a few years, both Man City and PSG had been hit with fines, but it failed to come down hard on almost any club. Milan were the only side from a top 5 league to actually be suspended from European competition, but this was only after they successfully appealed a 2-year ban through the Court of Arbitration for Sport and later negotiated a reduced 1-year ban with UEFA, which suited their interests. As David Ornstein said at the time, the ban allows UEFA to show the world they're clamping down, while Milan get some breathing space in their efforts to move into a more stable financial position. Their attempts to properly punish Man City, meanwhile, were an embarrassment, with the Court of Arbitration for Sport again overturning a 2-year ban and finding that most of the club's alleged breaches of FFP were either not established or time-barred. This essentially meant that even if UEFA had grounds to ban City, they had taken too long to strike. To the football world, the concept of financial fair play was looking increasingly weak. A year earlier, PSG President Nasser El-Khelaifi was elected to the UEFA Executive Committee, despite the French club being under investigation for FFP breaches at the time. The decision to make the Qatari businessman, whose beIN Media Group has rights to the Champions League, a key decision maker in the organisation which runs the competition, was viewed with suspicion within the footballing community, with La Liga president Javier Tebas suggesting that the appointment went against, quote, all reasonable rules of good governance. Confidence in UEFA's moral judgment has dropped in the last decade, not least following the decision to award Qatar the 2022 World Cup, which discredited former President Michel Platini voted for in 2010. In February 2021, it was revealed that 6,500 migrant workers had died in Qatar since then, an average of 12 deaths per week. Amnesty International reported that workers had been victim to forced labour, i.e. slavery, unpaid wages and excessive working hours, despite what FIFA have described as stringent health and safety measures. UEFA, meanwhile, have continued to back the competition, with President Alexander Ceferin lauding Qatar's infrastructure and labelling the Gulf state the Switzerland of the Middle East in 2020. Such questionable endorsements have also been made in European competition, with Azerbaijan awarded 4 games at the upcoming Euros, as well as the Europa League final in 2019. This is despite the country's regime being continually criticised by human rights groups, with Amnesty International reporting in 2020 that its government had arbitrarily arrested and detained dozens of opposition leaders and activists, as well as accusing its military of war crimes in its conflict with neighbouring Armenia. The fact that SOCAR, Azerbaijan's state-owned energy company, has been an official UEFA sponsor since 2013 has only added to speculation over the country's relationship with the governing body, with activist Sasha Durkop recently telling the newspaper that such an arrangement shouldn't be possible considering UEFA's strict rules on government interference. And this relationship has also hurt fans, many of whom had to pay upwards of £1,000 to make the 4,000-kilometre trip to Baku for the 2019 Europa League final, for which only 13,000 tickets were made available to Arsenal and Chelsea in a stadium of almost 70,000 seats. UEFA have also been accused of being soft on racism. In 2012, they infamously handed Manchester City a €30,000 fine for arriving on the pitch 1 minute late, just weeks after FC Porto were fined €10,000 less for their fans' racist abuse of Yaya Toure and Mario Balotelli. A year earlier, they fined the Bulgarian Football Union €40,000 for their fans' racist chanting, the same penalty later dished out to Arsene Wenger for confronting a referee. In April 2021, the governing body handed Slavia Prague's Ondrej Kudela a 10-game ban for racially abusing Rangers' Glenn Kamara, the first time such a lengthy suspension had been used in the instance of racism by UEFA. But while it was greeted as a landmark decision by anti-discrimination network FARE, the fact they chose not to eliminate the Czech club from the competition angered others, including Chris Iwelumo, an ambassador for Show Racism the Red Card, who described the punishment as laughable and the bare minimum. Less than a week later, UEFA threatened to ban clubs from its competitions and block players from participating in international tournaments after the controversial European Super League was announced, despite said players having no power over their club's decision to join it. This all meant that when the ESL was announced, while the football community united against it, it didn't do so with sympathy for UEFA. The governing body has been complicit in the sport, becoming a tool for billionaires to maximise their profits and questionable regimes to improve their reputation, while die-hard fan bases, treated as commodities and exploited by rising ticket prices, have been sidelined for global television audiences. The Super League was very much a symptom of the very real problems already present at the top of the game, and it almost ended UEFA forever. In many ways, they are lucky to still be here. So that was our explainer on the state of UEFA, but do you have any ideas for similar videos we could do in the future? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like and of course subscribe to Football Daily if you haven't done so already. And if you want to stick around, why not click on screen right now for our explainer on the new Champions League format. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.